My name is Patty Ordóñez. I'm an associate professor at the Department of Computer Science at the University of Puerto Rico, Rio Piedras in San Juan. That's Patty with an I and two T's to reflect both my Colombian heritage and the country I was born in. I'm a middle-aged Latina with long curly salt and pepper hair and with a dark blue background with the logos of the conference. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am the co-chair of the ACM Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, as well as the program chair for this conference. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the growing digital, technical, and data divide that many of our communities are facing, and recognize how fortunate we are to be able to participate in this virtual conference for a second year in a row, while many of our communities may have had to lose a year of education due to illness, political strife, climate change, financial need, or lack of access to a high caliber internet connection or positive learning environment. May we all find ways to build the bridge between the communities we work or study in and the ones on the other side. I would like to ask Brianna Blazer to say a few words about inclusivity. Brianna Blazer works with Access Computing as a program coordinator and counselor at the University of Washington. She has led the Tapia Conference Accessibility Committee this year. Brianna.
Thank you, Patty. My name is Brianna Blazer. I'm a cis white woman with straight brown hair, and behind me you can see some of my kids' artwork. My pronouns are she, her. So we have another chance this morning to reflect on accessibility at Tapia. You know, it's interesting, having this conference online has meant our accessibility needs have changed. You know, in past years in person, we've had concerns about accessible spaces and furniture, but this year we've been trying to ensure the accessibility of our online space, which those of you who I've talked to in person probably have heard me talk about how it's much harder to be accessible online than you would think it was in this day and age. My colleagues and community members have done accessibility reviews of the platform. You'll also notice that other attendees are utilizing sign language interpreters or captions. So if you attend a caption session, you'll be able to turn the captions on at the bottom of your screen. And I encourage you to turn the captions on to see what it may be like to use them. You can see if there's a delay. You can see how accurate they are. In some sessions, these captions are typed by a human captioner to ensure that they're more accurate and properly punctuated for better access for folks that are relying upon them. In other sessions, we'll be using automatically generated captions. See if you can tell a difference. You know, 5 years ago, we never would have said turn on the automatic captions at a conference, right? Because they were just not that good, and they've gotten so much better. And of course, there are many attendees with disabilities that don't have accessibility concerns with an online conference. Indeed, some of the folks that I work with and have talked to traveling to a conference might have presented a greater accessibility concern than meeting online. So you may have heard me talk yesterday about some ways you can make the conference accessible. I was really excited throughout the day yesterday, going to sessions and hearing folks describing themselves and sharing their pronouns. Consider doing that when you're talking to folks. Remember that there are people who may take a bit longer to type out response, just as there are some people who might not be able to see your booth or the slides in a presentation. Don't be afraid to ask if there's a person with a disability what they may need to be able to participate. And again, if you have any feedback about accessibility, feel free to talk with me or share it on the evaluation after the conference. And again, I think about accessibility in my day job, and I'm happy to answer questions and talk to folks about accessibility, so find me. So thanks for being here and have a great day.
Thank you, Brianna. It is now our pleasure to award the Commandant University Award for Retention Minorities and Students with Disabilities in Computing and Computer Science. Please join me in welcoming the chair of the University Award Committee, Manuel Perez Quiñones, a great friend and mentor. Manuel.
Gracias, Patty. Good morning. It's cool to hear my name pronounced in Spanish, you know? It doesn't happen very often. As Patty mentioned, my name is Manuel Perez Quiñones. I'm a professor at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, and I'm chair of the Commandant University Award Committee. I'm a cis white Latino male from Puerto Rico with gray hair, whatever little hair I have left, and my pronouns are he, him, and él. I'm here to present the Commandant University Award. The University Award recognizes U.S. institutions that have demonstrated a strong commitment to increasing computer science baccalaureate degree production of minorities and students with disabilities through effective retention programs. This year marks the 5th year of the award. The award decisions are based on quantitative and qualitative data. The qualitative reporting includes details about the institution, the unit that awards the undergraduate computer science degree, and the description of the retention programs. The quantitative data includes a 5-year history of retention data, broken out by race, ethnicity, disability, and gender, and other intersections. All nominations are confidential. Each institution receives a report of their data with respect to the other submissions without providing the names of the other institutions. The institution receiving the award cannot reapply for the award for 3 years after winning the award. We normally have a fantastic engaging committee, even when we meet online and we don't get to meet in person. It's a very engaging committee, which includes a researcher in the area of cultural responsive evaluation and assessment. This year's recipient of the Commended University Award is the University of North Texas. Congratulations to the University of North Texas. To hear about the University of North Texas effective student retention strategies. They'll share with us the strategies they have used and the reason why they won the award. Congratulations to them. And back to Patty.
Congratulations to the University of North Texas for a well-deserved recognition. It is now my pleasure to introduce Jenny Lay-Flurrie, Chief Accessibility Officer at Microsoft. Jenny is Chief Accessibility Officer at Microsoft, leading the company's efforts to drive great products, services, and websites that empower people and organizations to achieve more. Her team is at the forefront of creating positive experiences that apply technology to make a difference in the world and the lives of individuals. From how we hire and support people with disabilities in employment to innovative technology that aims to revolutionize what's possible for people with disabilities. Without further ado, Jenny Lay-Flurrie.
Good morning, good afternoon, folks. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here. My name is Jenny Lay-Flurrie, and well, let me start by giving a little bit of a description. I am a white female. I've got my hair tied back. I've got big glasses. I am wearing a fancy scarf. It's not fancy, folks, just to be very clear. That's black and white. And behind me, I have a British flag cushion. Folks may recognize a British accent. It's not Australian. I am very British, and also I think in view is one of my favorite pictures of Pong, which for the nerds amongst you, you may recognize. I'm utterly thrilled to be here today and incredibly honored to be here. I have been following Tapia for quite some time, and some of the incredible speakers and leaders driving this effort is something I'm fully behind. And so in this time, I want to share a little bit about our experience, our learning, but more importantly, hopefully engage in a conversation about the future of accessibility, the future of disability inclusion in the workplace, and hopefully answer some questions that I hope you have, and encourage you to pop anything that you want in terms of questions that come up as I chat through. So let me, I will share my screen in just a second, but what I'm going to do is walk through a little bit of the basics around disability inclusion. Some of you are way beyond basics, so just bear with me. I'm going to get through it real fast, but I think it's very important to lay that foundation before we get into some of the challenges that there are today. I'll talk about some of the things that are being done and some of the things that need to be done when it comes to creating an environment, a culture, a society that is far more inclusive of being, well, candidly human. And let's start at the beginning with some of this. And this is where I will hopefully chuck this up. But let's start with some of the basics on disability. And let's start with the demographics. Demographics, folks, if you don't know this, just, you need to. And for those that do know this, know that the demographics are in utter change right now. Demographics on disability, 1 billion plus, that's a number that actually came from the World Health Organization in 2010. Yes, it's 2021. I realize that's a few years on, which is why they're changing. It can affect us at any point in time. It is the one part of diversity that is incredibly different, because disability can impact us through birth. It can impact us through lived experience, accident, injury, illness. It can be something that you join on a temporary basis. It can be something that you join on a situational basis. But it's also an area where there is an incredible gap. In fact, the term that I think is beautifully coined by World Bank in 2016 is the disability divide. And there's lots of illustrations of that divide. If you look at the access to assistive technologies, and this was a study done by the World Health Organization again, and really when they talk about assistive technologies, they're talking about things that all of us can recognize: eyeglasses, canes, wheelchairs, and a lot more. Only 1 in 10 has access around the world to those that they need. If you look at unemployment and labor participation rates, which actually I was looking again this morning, I'm a full-time nerd. It is something that, well, we should all be deeply concerned about. Labor participation rate for age 16 to 64 here in the US is approximately 33%. The unemployment rate for people with disabilities is approximately 12% versus 6% people without disabilities. And that number has not materially shifted in 30 years since the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So let's talk about what is going on with a good sense, right? Demographic, we got to fix a disability divide. That's a basic summary. Let's get into what is going on from a good stuff. There is good stuff, because we have just hit the 30th year of the ADA. In fact, we've gone past that now with 31. And we've also seen this incredible boost in great representation showing up in books, in films. If you haven't seen Coda, which is the latest one coming out from Marlee Matlin, if you haven't read some of the amazing books that have come out, Being Human, Disability Visibility, Crip Camp, and Netflix, if it's not in your queue already, why? Where have you been? This one was Oscar nominated. And if you're not getting ready for NDEAM, the National Disability Employment Awareness Month, which, yes, trips off the tongue, I know it does, but it's still so very important. That's coming up in October, which is literally weeks away. There's an amazing amount of effort going into making sure that we have the lived experience of disability represented, not just in media and in books, but in everything that we talk about when we talk about disability. My vote is it's maybe a sniff of what is actually the right and most needed amount. Disability is not included. It is an exception, not the norm, and needs to be more vehemently there when we talk about diversity. If you accept that 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 of us here in the States, the CDC says 26% of the US population has a disability. Why isn't it more vehemently represented? My hope is that this just becomes part of our conversation, because it has been part of our conversation in the last couple of years. With the pandemic hitting, we have seen some incredible boosts. And while the numbers that I have globally say 15% of the global population, say 1 billion people, we do anticipate to see a pretty significant rise in disability coming through in the next couple of years. Some of that is really, well, fairly logical. There is a direct and an indirect impact from COVID. And this is where I stress, I am no medical doctor here, far from it. But I am closely watching the statistics that are coming out from some great organizations that are tracking this. In terms of an indirect impact of COVID, and the image that I've got up on the screen here, it's actually from Mental Health America, and it's a graph showing the mental health screening increase since January 2020. And this shows what happened through the year. And it shows a 634% increase on anxiety screens and an 873% increase on depression screens versus the previous year pre-pandemic. Almost 1 in 5 people in the US are now living with a mental health condition, and COVID has added fuel to that fire. Now, there is a positive impact that you can talk about, which is that the more the density of disability, the density of mental health coming through, people are talking about it more. And it's not just coming up in news articles in a negative way, it's coming up as in a positive frame of people talking about mental health conditions as a part of life. This is one of those areas of disabilities that will impact the majority of us at some point in our lives, whether we experience it ourselves or we experience it as a spouse, a family member, and a friend. But it's one that I think we need to be bluntly aware of when we think about the diversity of disability. This is an invisible, non-apparent. In fact, over 70% of disability is non-apparent. And if you look at that from deafness, blindness, mobility, speech disabilities, complex disabilities, because heck, being human doesn't mean they come in one, they come in multiple. And you look at mobility and you look at the rest of how it comes together, and especially neurodiversity, one of the common things I get is, how do I know if someone has a disability? And the answer to that is you don't. But what you can do is create a safe environment where people feel that they can self-identify. Because the impact of COVID on this community has been pretty vast. We've all felt it, whether you have a disability yet or not. We know that people with disabilities have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. I think the research here is still emerging. I popped a Forbes article that I think a lot of us lingered on, but again, there's a lot more still to come on this. We've shown that education has been negatively, positively impacted for some, but when it comes to remote learning gaps for low income and special needs kids, it's clear that, again, there's been a gap coming out, and I popped one of the NPR articles that came out in May last year on that. And also that long COVID, the area that probably I'm watching the most at this time, is impacting so many that have experienced coronavirus. Reports in the UK put this as big as 10%. And long COVID can impact any number of different facets. I painted the doom and gloom, but let's talk about what there is that kind of really gives me some foresight, some really, well, I think this is a really, really, really important time. The words on the slide, accessibility is more important than ever. And here's why. For us, it means that all the work that we've done and all the learning that we've done as a company, and I do work at Microsoft. I'm sitting here in Seattle in my shed, in my garden, which is where I've spent most of the last 18 months. I've been at the company 17 years. I've had the just joy of, well, I came to the company in London to work on Hotmail. I'm pretty sure, given the age of most of the attendees, many of you will not even know what Hotmail was, but it was really cool in its time. And I was very excited to come and work on Hotmail because I was one of the first users of Hotmail. Why? Because, well, there was a thing called Messenger that went with it. And folks, if you're now pulling up Google or Bing, because, you know, Bing is really cool. If you are pulling it up and going, what is Messenger? Good on you. Messenger was one of the first platforms to introduce video calling. And I love video calling. I've always lived, since I left my degree, which was in music. I'm a classical clarinetist by trade. I left that degree and I moved to London, and then I moved to different places in Germany and different places. I've always been away from my family, but always stayed very close to my family and needed to be able to call them. But here's the problem. I've got a really, really gorgeous British accent, as does my sister, as does my dad, but we're all deaf. My deafness is severe profound as it's emerged over the last 20, 30 years, maybe a bit more now. I'm not going to share my age. My sister was born with deafness. I got mine from measles. My dad kind of has the deafness where he seemingly hears food but doesn't hear any dishes. or chore requirements, but he's got late acquired deafness coming through as well, as does many members of my family. We didn't grow up with sign language. We grew up with hearing aids and a lot of speech therapy. And video calling meant and gave us the capability to be able to speak to one another. So I was one of the first to try it out, so excited. And when the opportunity came to leave a cell phone company, I was working with T-Mobile before, to come to Microsoft, I couldn't have been more excited. While I'm deaf, I'd never really been open about that. I'd always felt like I'd have to hide it a little bit because opportunities for, well, deaf musicians didn't really come around very much. But I came to Microsoft and learned that, yeah, they were doing really cool stuff, but they were also talking to one another a lot. And so I ultimately had to talk to people about my deafness. And I joined the deaf group. I joined every other group. And I found that there was this community of people at Microsoft doing really wicked, cool stuff. Sorry, I shouldn't say wicked. That's a very old term. You're going to forgive me on that one. There's going to be so much mockery, I fear, in this present. Guys, just breathe it in. Look up the word wicked. It's probably from the 90s. I created the disability employee group with the help of many people, and also, and thank you for calling it a wickedly awesome term. I appreciate your, thank you for, again, beautiful, gentle mockery. I do think that that learning of mine was the experience of many, many others. In fact, I've heard that over the years. What I found is that Microsoft has actually been investing in disability for a long time. The first disability group started in the 90s. The first effort on accessibility started in the 90s at the same time. And if you actually look at the journey over the years, yeah, there's been some cool stuff. There's also been bluntly a lot of learning of how to do this and how not to do this. From our side, yeah, we were one of the first to really get after screen reading. When the early versions of screen readers in some of our first versions of operating systems, we were the first to put out a dedicated disability support team, which still exists today. They're called DAD. I have no mom, but I do have a DAD team, a Disability Answer Desk. And we started really leaning into our own employees, which ultimately led to me, while joining accessibility full-time, maybe, gosh, 10 years ago now, and then becoming the CAO, the Chief Accessibility Officer, 5 years ago, 6 years ago now. And why does all of this matter? It matters because it was about us taking a new cultural approach to accessibility. And if you look at how we're architected here, the architecture of how we work is an org structure that is really a hub and spoke model. That hub and spoke model is about how do we have a core team, which I have, that sits in one part of Microsoft. But more important in every single way is how every other part of Microsoft, which is now coming up on 180,000 people across the company and around the world, has people dedicated and assigned to accessibility. The way to think about this is that I have the responsibility of knowing where we are with accessibility on our products, of our hiring processes, on our websites, on our procurement chain. And by the way, that's 30 to 100,000 vendors at any time, on our marketing. But actually, do I write the code? Do I write the next marketing campaign? Absolutely not. I'm a girl with a music degree from Birmingham in England, who spent 25 years in tech, but I'm not a marketeer and I don't write Windows code. I'm a full-time accessibility nerd. But what I do is drive accountability with those and help and partner with a carrot and stick to make sure that we deliver on the promise and the mission of the company now, which is to empower every person and every organization to achieve more, which clearly vehemently includes that billion plus, whatever number is going to come out, people with disabilities. And I think that was a very, very big shift. It was a big shift for us at Microsoft, because I would say that accessibility is often seen as a technical enterprise to render a piece of code accessible to meet compliance goals. And our purposeful goal set is, well, to blow through that. Compliance is a very, very, very important thing. But actually, to be compliant doesn't mean that it's usable, productive, it's equitable, it's delightful. And if we're going to change and bridge the disability divide, we have to aim for higher. It actually has to be inclusively designed with people with disabilities, and it has to be accessible by design. And in order to do that, you can't just think about a piece of code. You have to think about people, because that's where it all starts. And I think this is the missing piece to how the industry has thought about accessibility. I'm seeing it change, and I'm cheering vehemently everyone on. But representation is the key. It's not just getting people in. There's a piece that goes further than that. You've got to make sure that you create a safe, productive environment where people can self-identify and can bring, well, they can bring their magic. They can share their expertise. They can say, look, that doesn't work for me. That screen, it's just too, and it's kind of, well, it's not good for me as a person with ADD. It's not good for me with anxiety. It's not good for me because you're missing captions on your video, which, by the way, don't ever miss captions on your video, please. But this is the biggest trend that I'm seeing, and I'm hoping to see more of. When you talk about disability representation, you want to cultivate a workplace where employees can be confident and have pride in their disability. I want people to say the word disability. I don't want to hear diversely able, differently able, special needs. No, I have a disability. Why shouldn't I say that? I'm disabled. I think that's totally good too. Whatever terms are good for you. But have pride in the word. The picture on the screen is actually now a member of my team. Her name is Donna Zaka. She is a female. And she also has a fashion business, and she's wearing an incredibly gorgeous pink, yellow wraparound dress. She is, well, brilliant. She's an engineer and leads part of my technical team. She has dyslexia. And a few years ago, she came in and said, look, I have dyslexia. I want to talk about this. And I was like, game on, go for it. She's now come and said, look, I want to lead this and I want to help advance the world of accessibility. She was previously leading a massive section of our Windows gig. She's helping us to lead the future, and she's one of many. And here's the action that I think is really important when you're looking at companies, when you're in a company. Why aren't we talking more about disability representation? Now, bluntly, I think we've been through this journey ourselves. We started collecting self-identified numbers on disability representation a few years ago. And we started gathering from our employees if they had a disability or not. Last year, for the first time, we shared that publicly, and we shared that 6.1% of our Microsoft employees now self-identify as having a disability. We'll be sharing our numbers again next month. I will tell you a couple of things about this. When we shared these numbers last October, and we were, excited and nervous. It's always terrifying when you share something for the first time. I got a wave of questions coming in saying, I thought, is disability a good thing? And that was the biggest question I got. And forgive my flippancy, but you can imagine my answer. Yes, it is. Because by knowing that we have that, I can make sure that we have the right support services in place for our employees, but also we make sure that we are really leveraging those skills to build better stuff. But in order to get to these numbers, let alone what I truly think is the representation, which is significantly higher than this, you have to build safety. Now, some of the work that we've done in this area is quite a lot. But there's always more to do. We do have very strong disability employee groups. What was 6 groups when I joined back in 2005 is now, well, there's 22 different groups. that exist across disabilities. Some of our new ones, which is one of our 8 employee resource groups. Newest ones, we've just actually, the team has just launched a Microsoft Cancer Support Group. Cancer is a disability. Families of people with mental health. We have neurodiverse teams channels. We have people with eating disorders. Again, that is a disability. PTSD and traumatic brain injury. These are some of the list that is on the page of those 22 groups. It's important to have these. It was honestly the reason that I stayed at Microsoft when I was struggling back in 2005 and 2006. I joined the deaf group and learned that there were others who were deaf like me that hadn't been open about it to the extent of their deafness. And they shared with me their best practices on how to manage Teams calls, how to manage, well, it was Teams back then, Link, but you know, don't look that one up. But this stuff really, 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 really matters. The other one is also thinking about this whole sector as part of, well, a key part of building an accessibility model. So we also, as we were building our own maturity model on accessibility, embedded people into our model. So this was another key one for us. We do have now a maturity model when it comes to evaluating accessibility at Microsoft. We published it. If you want to check it out, there's a link on the page, or you can just go to the microsoft.com/accessibility site to check it out. We leveraged a model from Carnegie Mellon. We leveraged a model from a company called Level Access, which is an amazing consultancy firm that works on accessibility. We leveraged 65 members of my accessibility team across the company. And we now look at 7 different dimensions, of which people is one. And we define what this looks like as we go forward, and we evaluate it every year. And some of the things that we're looking for are how we're evolving our inclusive hiring. And so inclusive hiring, and I see some questions in the window, so I want to get to this. We do have several programs to proactively find talent with disabilities, because we know of the benefit that it can bring to us as a culture and to our overall accessibility program, whether you have a job in accessibility or not. The first one on this list is the neurodiversity hiring program. The history on this, it actually came from our autism hiring program, which we started 5 years on a hunch. And the hunch was that if we hired talent with autism, we would essentially, well, we'd be opening doors that had previously been closed, and we would bring in a new wave of mathematical, data science focused skill sets that would advance us as a company. It's also one of the biggest untapped talent pools that exist today. The unemployment rate for people with autism, I've seen varying numbers, but hover around 80 to 85%. And the reason, as we've learned from this, is multiple. And there's a lot more information on the site if you want to dig in. We've actually published our entire playbook on what we've learned on this program, as we've expanded it now from autism to neurodiversity. But the interview was the kicker. And that's what I would say was the main takeaway. We were asking people to submit resumes. Resumes often can appear gappy. They don't appear traditional, and could often be dismissed. Now, if you fix that part of the process and then you look at the interview itself was problematic. I have 2 kids with autism, one stepson and a daughter. Both of them are incredibly academically, well, if they get their homework done, quite good. But if I ask them, how was your day? The answer last night was, good, Mum. Okay, what does good mean? Well, it was, nothing to talk about. So, well, how about you do talk about it? Let's talk about it. And I have to go through and ask some specific questions to get even a little bit of juice out of that. Now, some of that is they're teenagers. I get that. Some of it is purely they don't think in that gray and illustrative terms. Interviews ask for the gray. So we remove that. And in fact, folks come to an academy. We do it virtually using Minecraft. And we found that 50% of the candidates that we bring in, we end up with job offers across 12 different divisions at Microsoft. We do it every quarter. and it's growing, and our learning is growing with it. It's not the only area. I would say that there's plenty other areas that we're also investing in. One is supported employment. These are kids and folks with developmental disabilities. This is a long-standing program that we have here, and now we're spanning it around the world, very purposefully to bring this talent in. And then also broad disability hiring. Folks, if you're a person with a disability and you're on this call, I would really just maybe share a couple of pearls of wisdom that I've learned and that I've seen over the time. Don't do what I did. When you're looking for companies, when you're looking at intern, when you're looking at postgrad, you're looking at whatever you are going after, see your disability as a strength. Look at the companies. If you cannot get through their website, if you cannot apply independently, well, if you have the strength and the time, tell them that. But also, don't perceive that's a great place to work. If you're not seeing disability communities, disability on the page, and you're not seeing yourself reflected, ask the right questions, because one, it might not be on the page, but two, why not? You want to work for a company where you're going to be supported. One of the key things to hiring across this talent pool is making sure that every part of the process is easy to find. We are not perfect, but we're consistently working on that. Making sure that we put right up front all the time, what do you need to be successful? Don't come to us for an interview and then tell us that you might need something. Tell us in advance what you need for an accommodation, whether that's extra time or an interpreter. So really, come as you are, and know that the companies where you're going to be best and successful are the ones that are going to see your disability as the asset that it is. And really look for that as you go further. In fact, if you're looking at Microsoft as a potential, there's a slide up here which is all about applying to Microsoft. And I wanted to pop this up because I know there's several folks looking at companies, and this is the time, folks, if you're looking at intern positions. Now there's lots of links. I'm just going to say them very quickly. There's aka.ms/explore Microsoft, aka.ms/university internship, which is right now. We have all the intern positions being evaluated right now, and they go through the fall until all the positions are full up. And then we also have our ability hiring events, which are those dedicated pan disability days, aka.ms/inclusive hiring. Please check that out. I will say we had our ability hiring a couple of weeks ago. We do this very periodically, very frequently. And in fact, it was an 80% of those that came ended up walking away with an offer. So there's a process to it. I can't guarantee or promise, but it really is worth going for it. And if you're interested in a specific role or have questions, we do have an open email address. It's dcareers, disability careers, dcareers@microsoft.com. Taking a step back a little bit as I cover off a few of the additional details before we get to questions, because we really do want to get to some of those questions. And I know there was a bit of delay because of my snafus on the bloody slides, but we will get to those. My goodness, I just said the word bloody. Forgive me. So one, I want to cover a couple of key things that really matter to us, right? As you look for companies, technology, you're buying stuff, you're looking at companies doing great things. Here's a couple of things that have worked for us. One, disability answer desk. Look for environments that have support for people with disabilities. And if you're sitting there in a company and you're like, I don't think we have one of these, well, know that, again, we've documented all of this, and you can check out what we've learned over the 8 years of running this team, taking, gosh, 12 to 14,000 calls a month. In fact, August was one of our biggest months ever, as people are returning back to the workplace and wanting to understand accessible features. The key thing here is to evaluate partnerships like the one we have with Be My Eyes, to put a ton of content out to help people with disabilities know the features and use the features, and that it's available in multiple channels. We do have an ASL support channel. In fact, this is Ariel from HSDC, who's on screen, who signed one of the videos for us. It's actually staffed by deaf technical support agents. They're actually in Sammamish here in Washington. And they help people every day using different products, whether it's Windows, Office, or Xbox. And also encouraging folks to really take training. We found, if you're going through this and saying, hey, I need to learn more, know that every employee at Microsoft actually has to take mandatory training on disability and accessibility. We've actually published some of that training now externally. I said to a company yesterday that was asking me about this, I was like, I don't know that we've removed every single Microsoft jargon or term, but I do hope that it helps people to learn some of the basics. What I want is for every single human on the planet to know their responsibility when it comes to being accessible. And they're confident in talking about accessibility. They're not worried about what words to use, about what etiquette. When they see a person with a wheelchair, they talk to the person in the wheelchair. When they see a deaf person, they talk to the deaf person, not the interpreter. When they are seeing someone or someone self-identifies with having neurodiverse or mental health, they know how to receive that information. And then they know how technology and digital accessibility can empower. The link on this one is aka.ms/accessibility fundamentals, but also know that all these links, just go to microsoft.com/accessibility and you'll see them all. So in the last couple of minutes, I'm just going to literally give you a little bit of a whiz bang on some of the nerdery. It wouldn't be a technical conference if I didn't do that. The words on my screen say nothing about us without us, which is the mantra that guides us on all of our technology. It is a well-known term in the disability and accessibility world. It basically means what's on the page. In order to design good products for disability that will empower everyone, you must design with, through, and for disability. What I look at going forward is products across the company, products in the industry where they have included people in that process. Once you've built a product for an area, the worst thing you can do is do that without garnering the insights of people that are going to use it. It just won't be a great product. And that means that one of the biggest areas that we're investing in right now is intersectionality. Intersectionality is something that I would say we've all been talking about, but from a technical engineering lens, what does it mean? There's two areas that my team is investing in, and I've just hired some great people to lead this. One is we're looking at mental health, and we're looking at what are those design standards that we can build in that make sure that our products really service the needs of all of us when it comes to mental health. And the other area that we're looking at is the intersectionality between Black and disabled, Black and African American and disabled, first place. There's lots more to come on this, but I would say these are the areas where, again, if you pull the red thread through, you must have people that represent the community globally that then empower you to build this kind of stuff. When you do have it, you start to get a few good things coming through. The other trend I wanted to call out that I'm seeing not just in ours, but also across the industry is personalization is so important, being able to customize your accessibility experience. There's a lot here that we've done that I think we've got to continue to do, but it's simple stuff. Sometimes the simplest things really matter. This is a quick GIF of Angela, who's one of our very senior leaders in gaming. She's low vision. And and legally blind, and she uses a lot of our features in Windows, which we try to make easier to find, easier to turn on, to really grow the font size. And we're here chucking it up to 140%, but also change the mouse. So instead of it being this little thing that you just can't see or find, she loves, and I love, the big pink mouse. And making that the size that is right for you, personalizing it. It's then a residual setting that stays every time that you boot your machine. You don't have to change it every time. It becomes part of your persona as you join technology. Another one quickly is automating accessibility. If you've heard the phrase, and if you haven't, you really should, if you don't know if it's accessible, it's not, which is really the right way to think about accessibility, then it's incumbent on us as a technology provider and everyone in the industry to make accessibility easier to do, easier to figure out, easier to know. There's lots of things that we're doing in this space, but I would say that the biggest one that we're investing in at the moment is pursuing and continuing what we're doing in Office. Millions of documents are sent every single day. And pictures have become the biggest communication vehicle. Pictures are great, mostly, because what you've got to have behind every picture is an alternative text. You've got to have a description that describes that, and it's got to be easy to get that description in there. I think everyone should take a minute just to honestly go and check your last document and see if it's accessible. In fact, we've got a accessibility checker. It's right next to the review, to a spell check on the review tab. We've now put running in the background, so it's actually running all the time across everything in Office. By moving it next to spell check, by the way, we increase the usage overnight 5x. By running it in the background, we're also seeing incredible increases in usage. And now we're prompting people. We're using AI to add in basic descriptions, but still encouraging people to manually review and edit those descriptions. By doing this, the hope is not that we increase AI, although that will be a side benefit in a lot of this, but it's that we're able to grow the density of accessibility and make everything just far more accessible by design. There's a lot more that we can and should do here. One of the simple things that's now out in Outlook as of this month is that if you're sending a large email, it will actually prompt you and stop you from sending and nudge and remind you to check the accessibility of your email. Think of that as the "Are you sure you want to send this?" button. They didn't allow me to write the words for that, which is, "Are you sure you want to send this non-inclusive, non-accessible email?" I wasn't allowed to put that on the page. It's something far more polite. But again, simple prompts that remind you to do this. Another trend that I think the industry must get on is affordability. This shone through the pandemic and shone through in a really big way. Captioning was the biggest one that immediately shone through. And if you're curious how I work on a day-to-day basis, I do use Microsoft Teams far more than I use Zoom, which you may have figured out from the snafus earlier. Bal is one of my main interpreter, but I do use ASL interpretation. I do mostly speak for myself, which many of the deaf population do not. So remember that there's diversity within any community of disability. But I do use ASL interpreter. She's pinned to my screen. And one of the things that we were able to do through the pandemic was to roll out AI-provided captioning free as part of product in every aspect of Teams, because there's different versions depending on your company, depending on whether you're a consumer or you're a university or something else. We've also got real-time transcription that happens on the right-hand side. And coming up, we do have new features coming out in the next month that are going to, again, take it further forward. The key thing from an affordability is that this should not be an additional cost. This should not be an additional burden when we've got an already immense gap. It should be something that's embedded. And so while we want to empower the ecosystem to have multiple areas of choice, we're consciously focused on making sure that these are affordable and available and easy to find and use. And so these are 3 things, with more in the pipeline, that we've learned through the pandemic to better serve our deaf and hard of hearing users and employees. But it's illustrative of a core foundational gig. Assistive technology can be, but shouldn't be, expensive. It shouldn't be an additional hurdle. We need to minimize that if we're going to bridge the disability divide. And the last one that I think is really significant is shifting left. Another term that you hear a lot in accessibility. What does it mean? It means that we embed accessibility into the design and build. By building it into the design and build, what you're doing is making sure that you are being inclusive and accessible from the get-go. And let me just be blunt. If you are running any kind of project and you haven't made sure your staff is thinking about accessibility from the beginning, it's going to cost you when you go to launch. And it's going to cost you because you're going to have to remediate that code, which could take you up to 100%, if not more, in terms of time and resource to do it. We put some of the tools that we use internally online. This is actually available. It's open sourced, which is Accessibility Insights. It's just accessibilityinsights.io. It's a very quick download. It's one that we use every single day. What it's doing right here is replicating a website. It's actually taken my website, which is microsoft.com accessibility, and it's replicating the tabbed view, going through it as if I was using a screen reader or assistive technology to see if it's navigating in order and logical flow. It's one of the many things that you can just get quick checks on. And if you get a pass, that doesn't mean you're awesome. That just means that you hit the bare minimum, because no tool today can accurately, to a 100% degree, fix your code. That is not the case, nor can it automatically test your code to that degree. So just don't rely on this to give you any tool, by the way, regardless of what the branding headlines are. No tool today can do that, but it can give you the insight that allows you to know if you're on track. As I close up, I'll just share one last thing. And then please hit me with questions. We are sitting in an incredible time and a massive opportunity. We have to shrink the data desert that exists for disability. We got to make AI systems more inclusive. We need data from people with disabilities, including images that people with disabilities was viewed every day. If we're going to have an appropriate data that hits all areas of the bell curve. And so as you think about the future, where AI is such a prominent part, think about how we can be more inclusive. This is one quick project. It's Orbit, which is City of London University across the pond. And what they're doing is collecting images from people with disabilities. They're collecting images of canes. They're collecting images of Braille. They're collecting images of just everyday use. And making sure that those are appropriately described and captioned, and then included into AI data sets that are then leveraged for machine learning. It's a common problem that we can easily tackle if we have focused efforts to drive and expand the data pools. And if you do this, then we'll make sure that simple tools that are used every day, whether those are the AI tools going back into Word and how we're describing images, or we're making sure that transcription is done appropriately, the quality bar will continue to improve and we won't leave people behind. And really, if there's any last thing that I would say as I look at our Up to Ambition and our goals, I would say that our ambition really is to bridge that disability divide. And that means we've got to take some risks. We have to focus on technology. We have to focus on opening doors, not closing them. and we've got to make sure that we have a culture that continues to sustain and grow it. So as you're thinking about where you go, what you do in the future, my hope is that you become part, and I kind of hopefully recruit you to be a part of creating that new future, that you think more inclusively, that you think about technology from all of our different lenses, because only together can we change the future. This isn't about one person, one company, one organization. This is about how we as a community can accelerate the journey of accessibility. The technology is available, but it's how we lean on it, use it, grow it, expand it, tackle the gaps and inefficiencies. And then I hope that at some point we will bridge that divide, and I won't be talking about a difference in labor participation rates. I'll be talking about how disability is a strength and how that's been proven through society.
There's lots of questions, Jenny. Thank you so much for such an awesome presentation. If you know, in the chat, there are tons of questions. So I hope we can get through them. We have about 20 minutes. All right, so I'm going to start with the first one. There was one that somebody talked about, your program, the inquiry neurodiversity hiring program at Microsoft, but you talked about it extensively afterwards. So I'm going to skip that one. The next one is, it says, I am a first-time job seeker and was recently diagnosed with a disability. When filling out job applications, many ask to volunteer disability disclosure. I usually choose not to disclose because I'm nervous this will negatively impact my chances at getting a job. I'm curious what this data is typically used for and tips for becoming more comfortable disclosing that I have a disability.
It's a great question. So that nerves I felt myself, and I hear a lot. I would say that in terms of you making a decision whether or not you're going to self-identify, I would recommend a couple of things. One, do your research. Go check out the website. See how they're talking about disability. Do they have communities programs? Can you get through the website? Is it accessible? Do you see yourself on that screen? I would really always do that. And if you do, and they see how they're positioning disability and they're talking about it as an expertise pool, as a strength, as something that they fully support and encourage, hit the button. And also I would say that most companies aren't asking for disclosure, they're asking if you need any accommodations. Most companies at this point are really trying to make sure that they do right to ensure that as you walk into that interview room, you're set up for success and you're not worried about, oh my gosh, I can't understand the question. And to be clear, I did 11 interviews. I met with 11 people before I got my job in 2005. At no point did I share with any of them that I couldn't hear speech. I went through those interviews without captions, without an interpreter. What a silly mistake. Now, clearly I guessed some of it right, because I wouldn't be here otherwise, but don't do that. Worry about the questions. Don't worry about whether or not you can actually access the questions. Make sure that if you need additional time, you need to make sure that there's no whiteboard. You need to use your technology, not theirs. You need to have a cited guide. Make sure that you put all of those up, or even if you don't know what you need, but you want to discuss with someone, put it on the page. Set yourself up for success. Now, if they mismanage that situation, if they don't treat it right, again, see yourself as a position of talent and expertise every company is vying for right now, because I'm in compete every day on talent, every day. There's always a ping. Can you speak to this candidate? We really want them, but they got multiple offers. I love it. Because ultimately I'm going to try and convince you to come here. But the biggest thing that I love is the fact that people have multiple offers. See yourself in that place, right? And if at all, disclose. It will power you as you come in and make sure that it's not about whether or not you can access a room, but whether or not you're the right expert for the job.
Wonderful. All right, the next question is, what training do you provide for your employees, specifically people managers on disability representation?
Right. Well, actually, we have an accessibility 101 that is mandatory for every employee at Microsoft. That we've actually just rebooted it. Incredible leader on my team, Erica Zmanowicz, developed that training. And that one's internal. We haven't posted that one online yet, but you can see the kind of the essence of that framing by going to the accessibility fundamentals training. What it essentially covers, managers and non-managers. So again, we're hitting 180-ish thousand. We've grown a lot in the last year, folks, folks around the world, is we start with the basics of disability etiquette language, how to approach someone with a disability, how to view disability. Yes, we say the word a lot. And I think that just say the word, if I can get that hammered out, and in the skulls of every Microsoftie, that would make me happy, if nothing else. Then we go through, well, what is the technology that's available? What are the things that we should be thinking about? What should you be thinking about, depending on your role, as you're developing a piece of code, a website, a marketing campaign, a process design? How do you make sure that your piece of whatever it is inclusive and accessible? So we talk about the responsibility that every employee has. And then we talk a little bit about the future and where we want it to go. So it's not a, you know, in terms of pushing that out, we're still learning. We've done this a few times now, but we will learn from this year because we did up it a little bit. I would encourage anyone who wants to see the stuff that we do to check out Erica's channel. She has a YouTube channel. And if you want to check out, I think it's on the Microsoft accessibility tag. I'm sure somebody will pop it in the chat window. That's quicker than me to find the link. And she loves inclusive and accessible cartoons, people. So if you see, we've all got our own little characters, cartoon characters now. Mine has red glasses, I know that. And so she's also pushing the future when it comes to building accessible communication from my lens, which I dig at the same time. So yeah, check it out. And if you've got thoughts, feedback, bring it on.
Wonderful. That's great. All right. So the next question, it says, I love the disability subgroups. Do you have any advice on how to explain to some folks who are resistant and disregard these on the importance of representation and these groups? And I love this question also because it applies to any, women's groups, minority groups. So do you have
the groups have grown. The basic rule here is that you have to have a collection of employees coming together to build a group. So it can't just be one human, it must be a group of individuals. They then become part of the umbrella of the disability ERG. My role in that is, you know, I have the honor of chairing that community for 10 years. I'm now one of the executive sponsors of it. And then they sit on the inclusion council that exists across Microsoft. You know, in terms of those groups, it's such an important thing. Those groups allow people to have conversations about what's working, what's not working, how to self-ID, what are the best providers, where do I go for this therapy, what technology is available. There's also often conversations about, hey, I've got this idea for this great piece of technology, what do I do? I want to hack on something. The themes of what comes out of those groups do bubble. So they also start to influence what we do and what I invest in accessibility. And I would say when I joined the deaf group, I literally just listened to the conversation for quite some time before I actually engaged in the conversation. And so I would say that that's an important component. And now there's often conversations in there that are really great to read and some that are really hard to read, but both are equally important, and you must allow those conversations to flow. So even if you feel the urge to step in, stop, and let the conversation go, right? Let it really field what is true and what is happening. And what you find is that people help one another. So I'm a massive, massive, massive fan. But get your gang together, build the community, and then encourage it, infuse it. pop thoughts out, share, and it will naturally grow.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, so there's so many questions, Jenny. I'm going to try and get through that now. You are fantastic. I just want you to understand snafus and everything. You are fantastic, and I want to excuse myself also just quickly because I made snafus too there. So thank you for your presentation. When you said "come as you are," that's hard for me. I'm also disabled and African American woman, and all of my layers of identity is so hard. It's also hard. Can you tell me how Microsoft is addressing intersectionality of disability of race and ethnicity? And you might as well throw in gender there because she's got it all.
No, it is hard. And I think the first thing is to authenticate that. It is hard. This is not an easy gig. And ultimately, the person who owns the decision to self-identify is you. The person who owns, whether you reach out and get support and help is you. And I think from a culture perspective, it takes time to really grow an environment where any individual, whatever you bring, feels psychologically safe to be able to have a conversation with a peer, with a manager, with a member of a group. And this is a tough journey. The stuff that I can definitely say is, start the conversation if you can. One of the things that, I had my team meeting yesterday, we were talking about disability and advocacy fatigue, which is a very real thing in our world. It is very hard to continually push, to drive for a high bar of inclusion when sometimes, whether it's in the workplace or at home or in the grocery store, which by the way is my idea of right now, because masks are not good for deaf people, let's be real. Going to the grocery store, I kind of put off. I do get my stuff delivered because I don't want to have to walk in and people talk at me and I have no idea what they're saying. And then I have to self-ID and then I have to say, I'm sorry, I'm deaf, I can't hear you. And no, you don't have to talk to, you can still talk to me. Just here's a translation app, here's a notepad, just step back and pull down your mask, help me. I've had people call grocery managers to come over and to find my care assistant to pay my bill, because clearly as a deaf individual, I don't have my own ability to do that. A lot of preconceived notions of disability exist out there. They're wrong, they're bad. But I think the key thing is to talk about it, is to talk about disability, is to talk about issues that face our community, is to look for those communities if you're considering and you know that you're a member of them, is to push some of those frontiers and to look for those individuals where you know you can feel safe. And so the conversation is very real, very happening. We push frontiers because of that. And then we have processes that really make sure that those conversations are treated in the right way with the right education and frameworks behind them. So yes, it is not easy. But again, see yourself as, gosh, I'm constantly looking for talent that is intersectional to help me to build best practices for this. So know that you are wanted and needed. We need you.
Great. Next question. What if you don't have a formal diagnosis due to monetary reasons, but you have an assistant, you have a, you have an assessment for proof of disability? Can you still apply for disability roles? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. This is a real issue. If you look at the average cost in the States of diagnosis on dyslexia, it's around $4,000 and it's not covered by benefits. I'm not going to critique the medical system. I frankly think that's kind of ridiculous, but it's clearly a facet, and many people have undiagnosed dyslexia, dyspraxia, and many other conditions as a result, because of, again, the cost of medical diagnosis. We actually have removed the need for medical verification for the neurodiversity hiring campaign as one example. And we're advising many of our partners to do the same, because it shouldn't be, following an inclusive hiring process shouldn't be dependent on high cost medical diagnosis. And so, yes, that is a key problem. Again, just want to validate or authenticate that, and look for instances, look for companies where they're looking beyond that.
Okay. Unfortunately, I think that's all we have time for.
Oh, no.
You have so many questions. So Jenny, we can download these and give them to you, and maybe I think maybe you can answer them in another. There's so many.
Yeah, no,
You
please.
really
I apologize, folks. I am on social media. I'm on Twitter. If that's that's where I do. If you've got any questions or any comments. But yes, I'll try and tackle any I can if you want to collate them, or if you want to pop anything on Twitter, I will definitely look at those there.
No, thank you so much for everything. Wonderful, wonderful presentation. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.